Hello.
Oh, hello, this is Paul Windling here. I'm at Oxford Brookes University.
Oxford Brookes, yes, I know Oxford Brookes University.
Yeah, School of Arts and Humanities.
I collaborated with John Thompson during my days in the army in the 50s.
Oh, I see, right.
1954, 55, 56. And I knew his two adopted sons.
Sebastian Littman.
Yes.
And Matthias Leber.
Yes, how do you know them?
Sebastian Littman's widow is actually visiting in a few weeks.
What's her name?
Is it Marie Odette?
Well, I'd love to meet her.
Would you?
Yes, I would. My wife Anne stayed with the family in Toronto, I think it was.
Yeah.
When they were there. Now, Matthias, what's his second name again?
Leber, Leber, who was the son of a famous resistance fighter to Hitler, Julius Leber.
Well, one of the great influences on my life was John Thompson.
Yes, tell me.
I mean, he went to Fettes College.
Yes. Oh, he went to Fettes. I didn't know. I knew he was educated near Edinburgh.
And he was one of the creators of UNESCO, wasn't it?
That's right. Yes, he worked with Julian Huxley.
Julian Huxley, yeah. And I illustrated I did a series of illustrations for him to work with his patients, for them to recognize a room which was normal and a situation which was abnormal.
I see.
So he was one of the first people I ever worked with, linking the world of science and medical science. Art and medical science.
Do these paintings still exist?
I wonder where they are.
Were they for UNESCO or?
Well, for him, when he was working in Oxford, I was stationed at Bicester, near to Oxford, in a medical hospital near there.
He was with the Warnford and in child guidance.
Yes. Well, they're bound to have information on him, surely.
It's not that easy. The record goes so quickly. The only substantial collection that I've located from him is in the Bronx Psychiatric Hospital in upstate New York, where he had his last job. You know, he left a lot of his books to the hospital, but they're just his books and books on ballet and.
You're not. He was a very cultured man. He drowned tragically young, didn't he?
In 1965 in the Virgin Islands.
He drowned, yes.
It was an accident, yes?
Yeah.
Tell me, was he important for you in shaping your career as an artist?
Of course he was, yes. Well, he was one of my first patrons, and I knew him through... he introduced me to his two adopted sons, because they were going out to Edinburgh to study medicine, and I looked after them. They were part of my life.
Ah, right, yeah.
I mean, both of them were at my wedding.
What was Matthias like?
He was depressive.
Yeah.
We used to make jokes about the Bernese Oberland, Matthias from the Bernese Oberland.
All right.
And I tried to keep him as happy as I could.
Yes.
He was a very sad figure. Basically, I wasn't surprised when he committed suicide. But they were lovely as a couple. They represented the tragedy of Europe.
Yes, I can see that.
So how do you know Sebastian's family?
I became interested in John Thompson when I was... I'm a medical historian, and I was working on medical war crimes. One of the war crimes investigators, Keith Matt, said that John Thompson was the most brilliant and insightful person he'd ever met. But he published nothing.
He was a friend of Picasso, a friend of everybody.
Yes.
He knew everybody between the wars. He died, he was about 60, wasn't he, when he died?
That's right, absolutely. Did he introduce you to any artists? No, wasn't like that.
I was at the beginning of my career. But when he introduced me to intellectual thinking, I need to know about it because I'm trying to write my memoirs. And I'm writing about the people who had the greatest influence on my life.
I see. I have a little bit of... I've found in various archives and through doing interviews, and Milton Rosenbaum. Have you heard of Milton Rosenbaum?
Yes.
Milton is still going strong. He's in his 90s.
Where do we find him?
And he lives in New Mexico. I can give you a phone number for Milton, and he mentioned your name to me.
Good heavens. Do you know Shelley Sachs, Oxford Brookes? She was head of visual art.
Right.
And I had a big exhibition of celebrating my 70th birthday.
Yes.
At France. Did you know that?
I just learnt about it. And unfortunately, I missed it.
Well, that's really sad.
Yeah.
Well, where do you come from?
Well, I was born in Britain in the 50s, and my parents came originally from Austria, but I began doing this work on Nazi medical war crimes, and John Thompson was really important for the Nuremberg medical trial.
The Nuremberg trials,
yeah. Yeah, he was really, really important on the medical side, and organised an international scientific commission and so on, and that's how I became interested in him. But then there was always a puzzle about him because he was working for the Royal Canadian Air Force and born in Mexico, and, you know, who was he and so on. So one thing to another has led to my interest in the idea of doing a full biography of him.
Yeah, you've got to do it. Royal Canadian Air Force.
He came to Europe then what I know about him is this, that he was studying medicine and science, and in the 30s had a lot of scientific contacts, and was in Germany just when the Nazis took over at Freiburg, and then went to Madrid to study with the neurologist Cajal just before the Spanish Civil War blew up. Then went back over to the States to Harvard, and there he met a Jewish psychiatrist and became very concerned with the problems of anti-Semitism, and there was also a deep spiritual crisis, and at some point he converts to Roman Catholicism.
That's right. The thing that interested me was a Roman Catholic. It's almost like converting to Judaism.
Sorry, what he thought of?
No. It's a serious step.
Yes.
For an intellectual becoming a Catholic. As, it's the same sort of thing as Evelyn Waugh and
yes.
Graham Greene and anybody who's got an intellect. And I was fascinated by that. He was interested by the fact that I was a Catholic.
Oh, I see, yes. I see, of course. Because you're from a British-Italian family.
That's right, yeah. The point is, if you're a Catholic, there's a good chance that you have an intellectual life if you're a convert to Catholicism. Not that the Catholic Church is very successful in, especially where I come from, Scotland, in defining an intellectual dimension. But the fact that he was a Scot and a convert to Catholicism blew my mind away.
I see. Right.
But I wasn't organised enough in my life. I was in the army. I still hadn't set up all the things that would have helped him. I had to create all sorts of things, and he damn well died at an inconvenient time, 1965, just before I got into my stride.
I see.
But he's a major, major figure, and he's linked to the war and to the Spanish Civil War and to the collapse of Europe, and his two adopted sons were among... How many did he adopt altogether?
I only know of two, and I also met Julian Hooper, was a sort of informal adoptee, because he had this spiritual settlement, Vive.
Vive, yes, which was in France.
That's right, near a place called Soissy near Paris. A lot of, I could say, intellectuals, and there were also psychotics who were also there, who came for the sort of as a spiritual retreat. And including John, who became Pope John then.
Pope John's, yeah. So this is why it's so fascinating to me. It doesn't still exist, Vive, does it?
No, you see, everything that John Thompson was involved in, all the traces have gone. And so it's only through talking to people that I can reconstruct the networks and what places were like and so on. No, it finished. The story is that one of the people there heard a voice, and then the place wound up. Heard a voice, because he was I think John Thompson was very concerned about people who were hearing voices and having visions. And he imagined this was John Thompson saying to disperse. That's the story that I was told. But it seems to have ended just before he came to Oxford. And he may have been thinking of refounding somewhere like that, but then he went to the States to work with Milton Rosenbaum.
Well, John Thompson was an extraordinary shadowy figure in my life, a very powerful presence. I recognized his sanctity. He was in a state of grace. He was taking on a Herculean task. The fact he was educated at Fettes blew my mind away. That he came from a Scottish Presbyterian Canadian background. So his Catholicism must have been a revolt against that. But I certainly needed him, I needed his intelligence and his intellectual rigor. And of course I recognized him as a world figure. And it's a tragedy that he's escaped as it were. He just disappeared. God, it's a tragedy, isn't it? The way human... I don't even know where he's buried, for God's sake. Well, maybe his body was never recovered.
I think Milton's son went to the Virgin Islands, but you're right, I don't know where his body is. It's probably on the... Probably, but there was a memorial meeting I know about, and that's been recorded. There's someone called Tony Schwartz in New York, and he went... And because John Thompson did recordings... That was one of his... He was going to the American South, and at that time he was concerned about the injustices with civil rights and black protest. And he was going to the South and recording people.
God almighty.
And Tony Schwartz, who's been a sound recorder since the 1930s and has about 50,000 sound recordings in his house in the east side of New York, has recordings of his memorial meeting, and also of John Thompson reading poetry, reading T.S. Eliot, reading Prufrock and so on. Really interesting. And also talking spiritually about hope and trust and the Holocaust.
Right, so I need to meet Tony Schwartz as well.
Yes.
Do you know that I was for 7 years Professor of European Cultural Studies at Kingston University?
All right. How interesting.
Yeah. I'm trying to write my memoirs, and my memoirs really begin as a human being born in 1930 who could either count down towards the Second World War. I experienced the whole agony of the uncertainty of being an Italo-Brit, therefore, the enemy of Britain. I mean, my family was treated abominably, and the whole Italian population here in Scotland suffered grievously. 550 Italians were drowned.
Of course, yeah.
In a terrible, through the madness of Churchill, and it left scars, very deep scars.
It was the Arandora Star, wasn't there, and all the forced internment.
That's right. Horrific. And there's still never been an apology. People just dragged away by the police and never seen again.
Was your family interned?
No, my family escaped it for some ridiculous reason. But you couldn't really escape it because everything was ruined. All your business, your name, you were treated like, because there were no Pakistanis or whatever, you were treated as the lowest of the low. You couldn't get a job for years and years and years. It was a hard time, and I was fascinated by, I was old enough to know the war was a load of rubbish, and that the Brits were as capable of committing war crimes as anybody. And that, how to love Germany again. I was very fortunate to have the Edinburgh Festival, which was all about bringing some kind of peace and reconciliation to the world.
Were you involved in the starting of the Edinburgh Festival?
I didn't. I've been involved. I've experienced all 55 festivals, but I've had a huge impact on the festival.
Yeah.
I presented 1,500 exhibitions and about 1,000 theatre productions.
Amazing.
I went behind the Iron Curtain 97 times. I travelled widely in the States. My whole thing has been trying to mend the absolute impossible story of the Cold War. They put it right.
That's so much John, because John Thompson was in Poland in 1948.
We talked about that. I went to Poland 47 times.
Really?
Yeah.
And he was so concerned about at the start of the Cold War. That was one of his. That was one of the sort of the spiritual crises. He was always drawn to points of crisis in world history, and so he was deeply concerned about what was going on. And I think that's probably why he went into UNESCO.
Well, I have been always drawn to. The moment I've tried to deal with Belarus, which is an agony, places like that, dictatorship. I'm also extremely concerned with the complete, overwhelming decadence that is evident in every aspect of our life here.
I think
the collapse of our educational system and the meaninglessness of university qualifications. Because I hate things like education. That's a lot of rubbish. What the meaning is trained training. That's what they mean. And the complete dependence on technology. There's very little evidence of profound thinking or a spiritual realm, which of course John personified.
Absolutely. I mean, it's as if you fulfilled John's mission.
Exactly.
I can see that what you did concretely were things that he was, I mean, he was doing things, for example, art therapy, ballet therapy, but he had the view of that how could you go on with sort of scientific research in a world that was so deranged and in such crisis?
See, I worked for 17 years with Joseph Beuys, whose theory was that art exists simply to heal the self-inflicted wounds that humanity suffers from, and that it's a healing process. Art is simply to make sense of death and our mortality. That's how we cope. If we don't relate to art, if we don't become creative,
right?
Every human being has the potential to be an artist. Everyone is an artist. Or they're not. If they're not, they're probably mad or sick.
Yeah.
Or dangerous. So, obviously, even in a subliminal way, he was having a huge impact on me.
Yes, I can see that. Your lives dovetailed perfectly. Must have been amazing when you met.
And the way he gave me the responsibility of looking after the term presence in the lives of Sebastian and Matthias. But I introduced them to a hell of a lot of people, and I've got photographs of them in my archive.
I see. So you might have photos of John Thompson.
That's the one thing that I'm not sure that I have.
Because
searching.
I have very few.
Well, have you got any at all?
Yes, I have a couple.
Handsome man. He was a priest.
Yes, a sort of a suave secular priest in a suit, and he generally sort of wears a silk tie, and so I mean I've had some photos of him from UNESCO.
Very sophisticated guy.
Heavily
disguised. I mean, he could come over clearly as a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant with a name like John Thompson. Are you Jock Thompson's bairn? We're all Jock Thompson's bairns.
I see.
That's what they say in Scotland.
Ah, right, I see. Ah, right. Okay.